So in spite of the somewhat sad news about Kazuto Ioka apparently retiring from the sport, of course having already vacated his WBA Flyweight Championship, good news, of course, rolls on ahead. Boxing keeps on moving. Brian Viloria, Hawaiian Punch, Viloria, former unified flyweight champion, former IBF light flyweight champion, former WBC light flyweight champion, will now be challenging for the vacant WBA flyweight title that, of course, Ioka just vacated, against Artem Dalakian, 15-0 Artem Dalakian, former Ukrainian amateur, originally from Azerbaijan, of course. 15-0 with 11 knockouts. This is a big step up for Dalakian. Not necessarily so much for Viloria. Dalakian has fought kind of an assorted cast of very kind of fringe journeyman, I'd say. Pretty much is what he's mostly fought. Probably the most notable name on Dalakian's record would be Angel Moreno, who also has his only other loss, Moreno does, to Thomas Masson, a fighter from France, who actually recently gave Daigo Higa a pretty good fight, good effort at the very least, before Higa was able to stop him for Higa's WBC flyweight championship. So, going from the level of an Angel Moreno to a level of a Brian Viloria is definitely a clear step up for Dalakian. In spite of, the amount of kind of international tournaments that he's been in the past. He's 30 years old, so he got a bit of a late start in terms of his pro career, not unlike, some other fighters from the Eastern European area, that strata with regards to their being, a little bit nicely better sponsored by the state, by the country that they come from or that they're representing. But here against Brian Viloria, a lot of people kind of forgot about Brian Viloria after he lost by 9th round TKO to Roman Gonzalez. But he actually got 2 wins since then. Both of them were this year. Defeated Ruben Montoya by a 8-round unanimous decision, and then defeated Miguel Cartagena by a 5th round knockout. And what was actually a very major fight. Miguel Cartagena was a very good fighter. Going into the fight, actually, he had a first round TKO win over Jobert Alvarez, who actually had given Juan Francisco Estrada 12 pretty good rounds. Estrada won. Was it a 12 rounder? Let me check just to make sure. No, it was a 10 rounder. It was a 10 rounder. Yeah, I knew that I was making a mistake there. But we're doing it live. Jobert Alvarez had given Estrada a pretty good effort in over 10 rounds. Estrada, pretty well outboxed him though, clearly at the very least. But he gave as good of an effort as the likes of Viloria did, and the likes of Milan Melido had done against Estrada as well. He then followed that up. He was going to be fighting against Toshiyuki Igarashi to decide who was going to be the mandatory for Shoki Kimura's belt, the WBO belt, who he, of course, defeated Zhou Shiming in order to win. But wound up getting called off because of head clashes in the 3rd round. Igarashi wound up actually getting the shot at Shoki Kimura because of the fact that Cartagena then decided to fight Brian Viloria for, I think, probably what was a slightly bigger purse on the Superfly 1 card. Now, this fight wasn't televised between Viloria and Cartagena, but there is footage of the knockout at the very least. I think there might be full fight footage from like a fan camera in the arena. But Viloria did a fantastic job. Even though Cartagena gave him a little bit of trouble there in the early rounds, especially with his jab, Viloria was able to make his power work for himself, was able to time Cartagena and, KO him, stop him. Stop him standing at the very least. It was stopped with Cartagena on his feet anyway. Who knows? Maybe Cartagena could have come back. He did score the big knockout over Alvarez. Maybe he could have come back and stopped Viloria. But Viloria was able to force the ref's hand at the very least. But Viloria, here against Dalakian, is fighting a guy that is, at the very least, he's an undefeated contender, 15-0 with 11 knockouts. Dalakian has a fair bit of power. His style is not unlike, some of the other fighters that we've seen come out of, the kind of the amateur, the high-end international amateur system of Eastern Europe. When you talk about, the likes of Vosdik, Golovkin, etc. I compare him a little bit more so to them, more so than say like a Lomachenko or Usyk, because of the fact that he's an orthodox fighter. But he kind of keeps his hands a little bit low. Not unlike somewhat of what Golovkin can sometimes do. Like sometimes he'll drop his hands a little bit. Dalakian keeps his hands kind of alarmingly low though, especially going into a fight with Brian Viloria. Dalakian hasn't necessarily fought a guy that's a straight up knockout artist. A guy that's really been able to make him think twice about keeping his hands so low. He's kind of working off of reflexes. It's a style that I think probably served him reasonably well in the amateurs, especially in the old style amateur system with the headgear where they kind of did like the compy box push button thing. Where even if you got hit with with a punch, it was, in a very heavily padded glove and you had headgear and everything. Against Viloria, that's not necessarily going to be the case. Viloria is a huge puncher. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Viloria tends to wear Reyes gloves, so he wears the puncher's gloves. He's looking to knock you out, man. And he has scored knockouts over normally very durable opponents. If you look at, even just to look at his record, over Giovanni Segura, over Tyson Marquez, over Omar Nino Romero, and the rematch that he had with him, the third fight, incidentally, that he had with him. Their first fight, Romero actually was the first fighter to beat Viloria. Their second fight, Romero beat him again, but then he tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug. I think it was actually cocaine or like an amphetamine that he tested positive for, funny enough. Maybe, who knows, maybe he was trying to make weight or maybe he just likes to get high. But Viloria was able to eventually get revenge on Romero when Viloria was the flyweight champion, incidentally. Just stopped Segura, as I think I already mentioned. Big knockout over Ulysses Archie Solis. That was a fantastic win. And even I think it was his the fight where he actually won the title against Eric Ortiz, a huge first round knockout, just lit that dude up. Nasty knockout. Look it up on YouTube if you haven't seen it. Viloria is a puncher. He is every bit a puncher. A bit of a boxer puncher. He kind of waits a little bit too long sometimes. And the one Achilles heel that he's had in the past is his stamina. He'll sometimes gas out in the later rounds. So, hey, if Dalakian can take him to the later rounds, maybe kind of bully him, muscle him around a little bit. Because Viloria, even as a flyweight, isn't necessarily like this huge like weight draining guy. I think he was 117 on fight night against Chocolatito even. But against Dalakian, Dalakian, just from the video that I've seen of him, looks like pretty strong guy. Somebody that can kind of muscle around his opponents, maybe physically intimidate them to a certain degree. So I could see him potentially doing that with Viloria. But like I said earlier, he holds his hands so alarmingly low, doesn't necessarily hold a very high guard or necessarily even keep his chin as tucked as maybe it should be, especially keeping his hands that low. Viloria, if he lands on Dalakian, I think Dalakian may not be very happy with what happened when he remembers what happened when he wakes up. Because honestly, to me, this fight has Viloria by knockout kind of written all over it. Who knows? Maybe Dalakian could show me a level of his ability that he hasn't necessarily shown recently, or even that he didn't necessarily show even as an amateur. Competing in international competition, he wasn't able to get like those big wins. Like world championship. AIBA World Championship medals or Olympic medals like some of his peers have. But Viloria wasn't able to do that either. He wasn't able to medal back in the 2000 Olympics. And it's kind of funny because, Viloria at age 37, he's, I believe, the only one remaining left from the 2000 Olympic class, still plugging away out there, fighting for world titles, fighting at the very least at the elite world-class level here against Dalakian now. But I do favor Viloria in this fight pretty comfortably. I think he can outpoint him. It's entirely possible that Dalakian may be able to, like I said, be able to outpoint Viloria as well. Viloria can be outworked. He has been in the past. That was how Romero, the aforementioned Romero, and Edgar Sosa were able to defeat Viloria in those fights. Especially on the inside. Although Dalakian doesn't necessarily seem like an inside fighter so much as he's kind of like a mid-range hooker, as Dwyer might say. But hooking with a hooker, which is exactly what Viloria is, a left hook knockout artist monster. I think it's just a bad, purely a bad style matchup for Dalakian, as well as being a step up, as well as being, a fight against a guy that's still, every bit as dangerous as he may have been a few years ago, regardless of his age and regardless of some of the wear and tear that he's happened to receive throughout his career. So I favor Viloria going into this fight, but I definitely expect a very good action-packed fight. Dalakian definitely has a kind of a crunching, kind of a heavy-handed style, and Viloria is, he's rarely in a boring fight. Every fight that I've seen Viloria in, win or lose, is pretty damn entertaining. I think Tyson Marquez, his fight with Tyson Marquez and his fight with Archie Solis were amazing fights. Really, just the knockdown, drag-out wars. Like, if you guys haven't seen those fights, I highly recommend them. You're definitely not wasting your time if you check those out. But I favor Viloria here. against Dalakian. But hey, if Dalakian manages to win, he becomes a new name on the block of the new class of flyweights as it's trying to refill out in terms of name value. And then if Viloria wins, hey, it shows that old dogs can sometimes learn new tricks and upset the hungry young lion, as it were, and reemerge and kind of constitute himself as one of the big dogs, one of the men to beat, one of the men to have to fight in order to call yourself one of the best flyweights in the world. So that's going to do it for this one, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.